Let me make sure that our view is speak gallery. All righty. So good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. This is another edition of Embodied Memories, Narratives of African Diasporic Religious Communities. And I'm so happy to have you, our special guest. We're really looking forward to learning more about you. And I know that everyone under the sound of my voice, when they see and they hear this interview, they're going to be blessed by it. So first, we're going to start with, can you please tell me your full name and what do you prefer to be called?
So my full name is Jean-Sebastien Duvillers, and usually I go by Houngan Sebastien.
Okay, Houngan Sebastien. Yeah, that's how I know you, by the way. It's Houngan Sebastien. But I should have known there was a Jean in there. With Haitians, there's going to be a Jean in there.
There's very often
there's going to be a Jean or a Marie in there somewhere.
Yes.
I should have known.
I usually insist when people want to call me Gene here in the US, my name is Jean-Sebastien with a hyphen. So it's actually my full name. Right. So I usually ask people, if you don't want to call me Sebastien, at least call me Jean-Sebastien. I prefer not to be called Gene, but it's okay.
I understand. It's a totally different vibration. Right. And you don't look like a Gene. You look like a Jean. You look like a Jean. You look like a Jean-Sebastien. You look like your name. Your parents did a good job. So Houngan Sebastien, Houngan Jean-Sebastien, Houngan Sebastien. What pronouns do you use?
He. I am a he. I was born a he, and but it's funny because I'm very open. Whatever somebody would choose to call me, I wouldn't ignore them.
Okay.
So we are plural, I believe. So whatever you prefer, but I think of myself as a he, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And do you agree to be a part of this research study?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. So now I want you to talk to me about the city that you currently live in. Like, where are you located right now? And when did you move there?
So right now I'm in Massachusetts. I am currently in Worcester, Massachusetts. I just moved here about a year ago in Worcester, but I moved to Massachusetts probably, I don't want to lie, has it been about 5 or 6 years ago maybe now, I think.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. And you're located in Worcester, Massachusetts?
Worcester, yes.
Worcester. And is there something that you'd like to ask me before we get started?
Nothing in particular, it's I'm very happy to be doing this interview with you. You have such an open heart, such a great heart, so it's normal for me to offer my response, my respect, and my willingness in return.
Oh, I thank you. Thank you. The feeling's mutual. So I thank you for being open. I thank you for your time. So, we're going to start off with, a little bit about your history, your background. So can you tell us where you were born and where did you grow up?
Very interesting. Very, very interesting question. It's a lot of people I don't often reveal that I was actually born in the US. A lot of people don't know that. But I grew up in Haiti. I was born here. I was born in Florida, and then my parents moved to Haiti when I was very young. My father had moved even before I was born, but my mother insisted to have her child here for opportunities.
Okay.
So I was born here, and then I moved to Haiti soon after. And then I grew up in Haiti, spent most of my life, middle school, high school, and then I came back to the US for university. And then before completing my degree, I moved back to Haiti, where I went back to my hometown or to my parents' hometown, Abricot. So a lot of people know me as the person from Abricot. A lot of people think I was born in Abricot because that's where I
Mm,
represent, that's where I work, that's where my home base is, that's where my habitation
mhm.
um, is. But from Abricot, I moved back here about 6 years ago, I believe, 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Oh, yes, very, very interesting. And so you said that you grew up, in Abrico mostly, and
So I
then
grew up in Port-au-Prince,
oh, you
actually.
grew up in Port-au-Prince. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So about like
But,
what age were you when you moved or when you moved to Port-au-Prince?
I was a baby. I was a baby. I grew up, I lived in La Plaine du Cul-de-Sac, where
Okay.
my grandfather had a lot of, had his base, I could say,
Mm-hmm.
land and wives and
Okay.
children. So a lot of aunts and uncles from there grew up there, but went to school in Port-au-Prince, Delma, Pétionville.
Mm-hmm.
But I always went to Abricot as a child during the summer. So my parents, we used to come to the US for a little bit, which is probably why I was able to keep my English some way, somehow,
Okay.
and fake it very well because people think I speak better than I actually do.
Oh, you're doing
Um,
great. You're doing great.
but after coming to the US for like a week or so, we would go to Abricot for the rest of the summer.
Okay.
And I grew up with this I guess my parents educating us in such a way for us to know that Abricot was our home. So Abricot was,
Mm-hmm.
even though I grew up in Port-au-Prince, I always thought of myself of, Abricot person that was in Port-au-Prince for opportunities, for schooling, for
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But which is why when I moved back to the US for university, um, when I decided to go back home, I decided to go to Abricot, and I was one that always spoke about decentralization in Haiti, decentralizing, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it is time for me to live up to my, to the politics of my words. I'm always saying, shall people go home?
Mm-hmm.
So since Abricot was that place I deeply considered home, so that I moved back to Abricot when after university, yeah, and lived there, created projects there. Most of my projects are there today, which is why people who know me, they usually know me as the Abricot person, as the Abricot dancer,
Okay.
artist, jeune ganga. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I want to let's back up a little bit. I want to talk to us more about the importance of decentralization, right? You said that you talk about that. Why, like, talk to us about what that means. What do you mean by that and the philosophy behind it, and why is it important to you?
So you're pulling out politics in me right already so soon in our conversation. But another thing that I talk about so much so, as an artist, I guess, or as an activist, often speak of Haiti, um, with a spelling Hayti rather than HAI double dot TI,
Okay.
which is the name of the republic. I like to speak of the empire that was declared in 1804.
Okay.
Um, and I like to speak of the empire as a certain political structure that included plenty, and that that respected the plenty for what each was, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to think of myself as an Abriko person coming from the kingdom of the Grandoko kingdom. um, and we have our way of life. We have our set of rules. We have our way of being, of
Mm-hmm.
expressing ourselves. We have what we eat. So often, Paul Prince people have the tendency of speaking about Haitians as, you know, you're not, you know, a Haitian does not eat properly if he hasn't eaten rice, is what
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people say. But where I'm from, we don't eat rice. We eat tom tom. That's
Okay.
like the main food that we eat. It's like African fufu, I
Like
guess,
fufu.
but made
Mm-hmm.
with breadfruit. We hardly eat rice. We ate rice maybe once a year when we had like a special rice from our region that came
Right.
out once a year. We called it Juice. It was called Juice Soleil. So
Mm.
when Juice Soleil is out is when we eat rice. But the rest of the year, we don't eat rice.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole element of talking about the Haitian identity um, really as a certain Pétionville identity, you
Right.
know, it's something that I never really supported in my activism, I guess. You know, I always
Mm-hmm.
insisted on the importance of the diversity and the unity because that I believe that's the difference between Haiti and, for example, the United States of America or a lot of Western countries. You know, a lot of Western countries, there's this concept of making people integrate a system,
Mm-hmm.
integration a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Haiti, the empire that Dessalines created, you know, the integration was different. The integration was done with respect to the individuals, with respect to the different cultures that shaped
Mm-hmm.
the union. You know, we were
Right.
Nago, we were Igbo, we were Dahomey, we were Congo,
Right.
we were so many different things, you know. We were American, we were Guadeloupean, we were Jamaican, we were all different types of things.
Right.
And all
Mm-hmm.
these different types of people with their culture, with their being, with their spirits, were indeed a part of this IT, this empire.
Mm-hmm.
And they were a part of this IT without having to lose any of who they were, nor without having to be different, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The IET was an accord, was a consensus. The IET was a declaration. It was a aibobu. It was a it was it was a new beginning, you know, the beginning of 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 human rights in a certain way, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, I could go on and on, but I don't want to spend the whole time on just one subject.
Well,
But
this is, go ahead.
decentralization for me is so important because it's so important for us to remember that we are not a republic of Pétionville, um, reminding people that Pétion killed Dessalines, but that we are a whole
Uh-oh.
empire,
Shots fired.
that we are a whole empire, you know, and an empire where we had different, where we had plenty heroes, where
Right.
Pétion was a hero to some people, where Christophe was a hero, where Toussaint Louverture was a hero, where
Right.
Dessalines was a hero, where there's plenty heroes. And these plenty heroes had their place, you know. One thing that you often hear in Haitian Voodoo, you know, we say, you one hand, you know, is power, l'union fait la force. But
Mm-hmm.
when you open that hand, there's different fingers and they have different heights. No finger is the same. And that is a fundamental element of our culture, our identity of who we are, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
being able to exist in plenty, you know, being able to see ourselves even as not just one, we are plenty spirits, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and each of them have their own power, their own existence, their own divinity. You know, it's just something that is so important that as a Houngan, I feel like it is part of my work to share that with the next generation. You know, that we are not just a republic. You know, we are an empire, and in that empire there is plenty. And it's not just about a center, but it is about all the different layers and all the different places and all the different players as well. So.
Okay, thank you. You know, this actually it's really, really helpful to understand your worldview, right? Your philosophy, your lens, because I knew that was important to you because you mentioned it. So that actually helps us to better, you know, interpret how you're going to respond to the other questions, right? And kind of what your orientation is. But particularly on that point of that you made about decentralization and respecting the multiplicity, right? You use the word plenty, but the multiplicity in Haiti and the diversity of Haitian experiences is also really important, right? And so interesting enough, I just last night, I saw something on social media and I want to ask you about this. Do you put épices in your sauce pois noir? Do they do that in Abricot? This is a very serious question.
And by épices, you mean that blended épices that Haitian Americans call épices, right?
Yes.
Which is not just Haitian Americans, you know, we all call it épices. I think in Abricot or in a lot of province where there's no refrigerator or you know, there's a different way of cooking. So we cook with a lot of coconuts, for example, in Abricot, and we do épices on the go, and you know, we do épices as we go. So not all foods that we cook use the same épices.
Okay.
Yeah, so
but like the one that could
like being from Abricot,
right,
and coming into Port-au-Prince, coming into the United States of America, being a Haitian in the US, where I make my épices and I have my épices in the fridge right now, and I use it for everything. It's funny because I see that as my Haitian American experience more than I see it as my Abricot experience.
Okay.
Because in Abricot, I definitely wouldn't put the same épices in everything, because I probably wouldn't have even prepared the épices in that way, you know. It's just very convenient in the US. It's prepared, it's in the fridge. I just pull it out, just like in American or a different culture of having Maggi or, you know, things like that. Like in Abricot, we didn't use Maggi, we didn't use things like all those things, and a lot of cooking seemed to be a lot more simple. So for example, in my épices here, I will put like red pepper, green pepper, yellow pepper, and you know, all these different things, and onions, and you know, everything. Whereas in Abricot, we don't have all these things in all seasons. So depending on the season, it would be a different thing. Depending on the what we're cooking as well, it would be different. You know, my family have a way that they do pois noir. I will not reveal the secret.
Okay, because I was about to say, you didn't answer my question, Olga.
But there's like 2-3 ingredients for us that makes the pois noir.
That makes the pois. Okay, yeah. I will not, you know, delve further, you know, into the family secrets. But the reason why I ask you that is because people were up in arms. Haitians were up in arms on social media about this video of a woman who was from Canada, a Canadian woman, who was showing like, this is how I make, you know, this is how I make Haitian sauce pois noir. And
Mm-hmm.
at one part, some people were saying, "Oh, she did such a good job," and then some people were saying, "Wait a minute, we do not put épices,
Peace
you
in the
know, in
corner.
sauce poivre noir." And then other people responded and said, "Wait a minute, people cook different ways in Haiti. We have to remember that, you know." And where I'm from, we actually do put épices in sauce poivre noir. And the woman used the term where she said, she used the term "commandé épices." Right,
Mm-hmm.
commandé épices, and
Mm-hmm.
they kind of fry it a little bit and then put it in.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Mm-hmm.
was, I just wanted to make that connection there, right? This is something
Mm-hmm.
that we, I think, you know, in all nation states, right,
Mm-hmm.
which are kind of artificial, right? They're imagined. There are these
Mm-hmm.
imagined communities. Quote Anderson, we imagine, and then we forget that there's diversity, right? There's no one way to make
Yes.
something,
The way they
right?
cook in Latibonite is so different than the way we cook in Abricot is different than the way
Right.
they cook in Port-au-Prince. You know, Port-au-Prince had, because it was so central, has a tendency of being able to kind of blend everything else.
Okay,
And
right.
you know, and being in the US or being outside of Haiti, outside of the island, you know, is a whole different layer of that Port-au-Prince, you know, where everything is also blended in some way somehow. But you know, there are so many different ways, you know, and you know, there are some traditions, you know. So for example, there are ways, for example, that you would do griot traditionally,
Mm-hmm.
you know, griot d'Antoa. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Dante's griot is cooked in a certain specific way.
Right.
But then when I'm cooking griot at home, I might spice it up differently. You know, if I'm having a party, I might, you know, make it a little bit more contemporary. And I think it's something that, you know, I also honor in our culture, is that Haitian tradition is very contemporary in the
Mm.
sense that, you know, it does leave space for creativity and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So yeah, I feel like the whole discussion from my Abricot mindset is a very Haitian American discussion, you know, and you know, as a Haitian American today, I would take part of it, but it wouldn't be that serious, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's so interesting. It really is. And it's something that's relevant, right? To our identity, our sense of identity and nation. And, you know, so thank you for that. You know, this is very interesting. I'm gonna stop that discussion because I can go on and on about Guil. I do have, you know, as a Black American, you know, Vodouyizan, I do have an opinion on griot. It is my opinion. I do have my preference. You know, so but I'm gonna keep that to myself for now. But I do have
Okay.
a way that I feel, you know, like griot
About
should be
grill.
prepared.
So could I mention, because you mentioned it and we're just you're pulling out just random knowledge, random perspectives, you know. Griot, I actually did. I do research. I like to research culture as well, because as a Houngan, you know, I have responsibility with culture. So
Mm-hmm,
I,
mm-hmm.
I I try to find things. One thing very interesting in griot, sieve. A lot of people don't like pork, don't eat pork, and they mention how pork, if you leave it, it rottens and things like that.
Mm,
And in Haiti,
mm-hmm.
a lot of, like, before, you know, people used to clean the meat, the griot meat, with sieve, and the pork in particular. And I did this experience. I was chemistry major at the time,
Mm-hmm. Can you
and
translate C for us?
I have no idea how that what that
See,
is.
I've heard it before, but I'm not sure what it
So
is in English.
it's like some
Describe it.
type of green onion, but it's very specific. It's more acidic, it's smaller. I don't find it everywhere. You know, you have to be like in a Caribbean market or a Latino market to find it.
Okay.
It's not in like the big markets. So I don't know how to call it,
Okay.
unfortunately.
No
But
problem. We're gonna figure it out.
interesting thing, it's something that neutralizes and that treats the pork meat. When you clean pork with sieve, it
Mm,
may sit out for long, it may go bad, it will not develop the same biochemistry worms that pork
okay.
meat usually develops
Oh,
without the sieve.
fascinating.
It's amazing. It's amazing,
Wow.
yeah. And lime doesn't fix it, Zolan doesn't fix it, but sieve,
Mm. And this is
clean.
this is a plant. This is a
It's a
plant. You were
plant,
saying
yeah.
like a you were saying that it's a green plant. It's not
It's in the
scallion.
I don't know. I don't even know what scallion is. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's
But it's in
okay.
but it's in the family of green onions and eshallot.
And shallot. Okay.
So
Okay.
it's like something in between green
Um,
onions and shallot.
green onions.
It
Okay.
it's acidic. So a lot of people, for example, do not eat sieve because it's acidic. It might give them acid reflux. So, for example, I might personally in my like private cooking, that's Sebastien cooking, I
Mm-hmm.
might I won't use sieve in my chicken, but I will definitely use sieve in my pork, for example. Which is why,
Okay.
even this concept of a piece, like we don't use everything for everything. Each thing have their own little ingredient, like pork without zone, like griot without zone for some of us is not griot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Chicken, we could clean it with lime, and you might not clean it with orange, just like you might clean it with orange. It will help it get a better color. But pork, I mean griot without orange, it's not called griot if it doesn't have orange.
Right. No, I got it.
It's so funny. Uh, culture, man.
Yeah. Wow. You're teaching us a lot. You're teaching us a lot. Um, and so we started talking about faith, because faith, we're living it. So even as we're talking about cooking, right, you started
Mhm.
talking about, like griot maîtresse danto, griot danto. You started talking about these different traditions and faith traditions. So now let's go there, right? Let's talk more about it. When you were growing up, what faith community or faith communities did you grow up
Mhm.
in? And what was your
Yeah.
experience like?
Whew. So I definitely grew up closest to the Catholic faith. My family was Catholic. My aunt, who was my neighbor, who I lived, who was like a mother to me as well, was part of the church. They were part of the charismatic movement. I don't know if you're familiar with um, the charismatic movement
I
from
am.
Catholic Church and Haiti and all of that.
Mhm,
And I kind of grew up around that a whole lot.
mhm.
I was very open. My father was
But you
quote
know what?
unquote
Let's back up, because you said that you asked me if I'm familiar. I am. But can
okay.
you just kind of say uh kind of like what the significance of that was to you for our audience, like the charismatic Haitian
Catholic
Catholicism.
part because it's
Yeah.
like there's
Because we have the
the
charismatic Protestants, we got the charismatic Catholics. So
okay.
yeah.
So I guess I didn't realize all these different layers, but I definitely thought of the extra layer of speaking in tongues and
Okay.
miracles, and moments of epiphany. I don't know if that's the right word. I'm always inventing words sometimes, but
Epiphany, right? Like sudden
moments of
understanding. Epiphany is
moments
like
of
sudden
or not this
understanding.
epiphany, sometimes sudden knowledge, but also
Mhm.
moments of trance and all of
Okay.
that.
Like
Yeah, and
ecstasy. Possession. Okay.
possession, like extreme or very woof moments.
Got it.
you know,
Got it.
not just the sitting in church and the standing up, sitting down, standing up, sitting down, but going into the la 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 ba ba la ba la ba la ba,
Right. And this is and so just to clarify, and this was in the Catholic tradition,
Mostly in the Catholic tradition for me,
the
because my
charismatic.
parents, not my parents. So my father was like atheist, did not believe, did not want to deal with anything spiritual. My mother was kind of in between because her sister, who I'm talking about, who was very close to her,
Mm,
was part of the church, was like a, leader in the church, and was also part of the charismatic movement, they called it, where they had like a charismatic congress once a year in Haiti. And so I grew up with my Haitiest father, but
mm,
also going to Congrès Charismatique in
okay.
Haiti, and also
Okay.
going to church on Sundays. It was interesting because I did my first communion in school. I had no choice. I was put into first communion and I did
Mhm.
it. And then after first communion, you're supposed to do like confession. And by that time, I was old enough to be like, you know what? I don't get this and I don't connect with this, so I don't want to do it.
Okay.
So I
Right.
didn't do that. So I stopped at the first communion. And, I told you a little bit what my environment was, but personally, I was not so much a church person. I went to church not every Sunday, but most Sundays because that was my opportunity to drive. Because as a young child, my mother did not like driving, and it would be her excuse not to go to church because she doesn't feel like driving. And
Okay.
at the time when I was able to drive for her, I was like 12, 13 years old,
Oh.
or maybe 13, 14. I lived like in La Plaine, not a lot of cars or whatever, and I was able to drive for her. I would be like, let's go to church, you know? So,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I went to church, but it wasn't really church that was my personal thing. However, in charismatic prayers or in charismatic um, ceremonies,
Mm-hmm.
I would be very, very, very much involved and very, um, like I would be in it. That was my
Mm.
thing.
Okay.
So yeah, so I grew up, like I said, around that. That was my environment. I didn't really I didn't follow people in church. I didn't follow my aunt that was like part of the church solidly. I didn't follow my mother either, that was like halfway. I did not follow my father that was out. He was like, y'all people are stupid for believing in anything.
Mm.
And excuse my French, I'm very expressive, and you'll see that I say things, I act things. I mean no disrespect to anybody. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also a performer, so it's like it comes out the way it comes out.
Right.
But I grew up with all of that, and I didn't really follow any. But when it came to charismatic, which comes from also having charisma, I,
Mm-hmm.
I I believe that I had charisma, and I used to go deep, into prayer, and
Okay.
I used to go deep and get into possessions in the
Mm.
charismatic um, um, church and congress and things like that. Like there's one story that I don't know why it's like at the basis of my spiritual identity. It's because I was in this moment in a charismatic congress where I had like a half possession, I guess, in
Mm.
the sense that I could see what was happening, but I could not control myself at all. And I
Okay.
remember this moment where there was this moment where I was moved to say things to people and to different people that were around me, including my aunt, including my mother, including like family members, but also including people I did not know at all, you know,
Mhm.
and basically in voodoo terms, I was doing readings for these people, like
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
just right there. Like I was at the time, I felt moved by the Holy Spirit, we'll call it the Holy
Mm-hmm.
Ghost, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the Holy Ghost was working. You know,
All
he was
right.
not just manifesting; he was speaking up truth. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and people were crying and people were, you know, came all around me at that time. It was a very powerful moment in my spiritual life because I could see what was happening. I was embarrassed being the son of my father, you know, who thought of that type of people as being dumb and stupid, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
I was in that position and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for my mother because my mother was confused, not understanding what was happening, and she was crying like, what is happening to my child? You know,
Mm-hmm.
my parents are in healthcare, and in healthcare, you know, there's mental health is a real thing, you know,
Right.
and what is happening, you know, is he going crazy? You know. So
Mm-hmm.
there was so many sense of worrisome. At the same time, my aunt was so proud of me and, oh, you know, hallelujah, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there was all those different movement, and me, I was like a child. I don't recall, I don't remember how old I was, but I was not old. I was very young, you know. So it was a lot for a young child, you know, to go through at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And so it stuck to me because I don't know why it stuck to me so much. I think there's also the idea that I had friends there as well. So that was also an embarrassing thing. I mentioned in the beginning that I grew up in La Plaine, which is kind of far away from Pétionville or from, you know, center of Port-au-Prince, but I went to school, you know,
Okay.
and, you know, closer to the capital. So I used to drive 30 minutes, 45 minutes to go to school. So I had my La Plaine people, you know, as, you know, close to the earth, you know, it was a place of agriculture, you know. And then I had my Pétionville friends, my intellectual friends, and my preppy friends, you know, that did not necessarily do the same thing that
Mm-hmm.
my Lapland friends did. And in this Congrès Charismatique, everybody was there. My Lapland people were there. My friends from school were there because, you know, my family was there. Strangers were there. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was, it was something big in my life, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. And it's something that
Mm-hmm.
sits with me forever. You know, it sat with me with my, I guess I would say, a Christian faith some way somehow. Even though I wasn't religious, but when I mentioned the name of Jesus, I it came from within, and it came um with faith. You know, it wasn't meaningless to me. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and today, even when I mention Elzuli, when I mention Ogu, when I mention my spirits, it, you know, it's there. That moment, it's still there with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because it wasn't my only moment like that, but that particular moment was, I call it one of my different initiations.
Mm,
You see what
mm-hmm.
I mean? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yes,
So,
absolutely.
mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was growing up, and then voodoo. Voodoo was interesting for me because in my family, voodoo was practiced, but voodoo was very hidden. Like I did not know my mother, who knew her father was a Houngan so great, did
Okay.
not did not reveal it to me until after years of initiation. After a few years that I was already initiated, is when she
Wow.
finally accepted that. Well, I knew this, I just wasn't involved, and I didn't see why it was important for me to mention it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so voodoo was somewhat taboo in my household, some way, somehow. But it was very weird because my grandmother, my great grandmother mostly, who lived with us for a little bit, you know, every once in a while had to leave the house to go to service, you know?
Okay.
And these service were at nighttime, and you know, sometimes she would come back a little, you know, kind of dressed up. Like
Okay.
I feel a little dressed up right now with a hat that you wouldn't see just walking on the streets of Port-au-Prince, you know? so
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like voodoo was present around me in that way. Voodoo was also present around me in through the drums. I love the drums. And
Mm-hmm.
my mother also loved the drums. So her way of being able to enjoy the drums without having to talk too much or too deeply or without having to invoke voodoo too much
Mm-hmm.
was to listen to Bookman Experience and Ram a whole lot.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
grew up like with Ram and Bookman all the way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when it got to Azol, you know, my mother loved Azol, but that was a little bit much to share with her children.
Okay. Okay. Got
It
it.
was starting to be too close to
Right.
ceremony, you know, or to voodoo,
Right.
you know.
It was
Um,
outside of the respectability.
yeah,
The
yeah,
respectability
yeah.
voodoo. It
So,
wasn't the mainstream voodoo music.
uh-huh. So I grew up a little bit like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then you know, I was able to sneak a few times and follow my grandmother to the ceremonies, you know. It was
Mm.
not allowed, but I was able to witness a little bit and see a little bit and kind of also witness their attitude, you know, around it. Not my parents. My parents wouldn't go, my mother wouldn't go, but my
Mm.
grand grandmother who lived with us, and also my grandmother who kind of also stayed away from voodoo but would go to these ceremonies because they were kind
Hmm.
of family ceremonies as well, you know. So
Hmm.
I was able to still witness, I guess, her attitude around that. And then of course I also lived a little bit of the intellectual voodoo, I would say, in the sense that, you know, the artists. I grew up around some artists, some very famous artists as well, and some
Hmm.
intellectuals who would mention voodoo and talk about voodoo, where voodoo was this thing that is so important for the Haitian identity, but it
Okay.
was something that was not intellectual enough for us to do. You know,
Okay.
there there was also this conflict between some of the activists that went to voodoo and those activists and intellectuals that spoke about voodoo but that did not practice it, you know.
Right.
And the conflict between the two of, or you did not have to go down to the people, you know, some people, you know, the people needed to get to our level. So I grew up around these conversations and these
Right.
feelings and emotions as well.
Hmm.
I did not grow up so much around the Protestant Abba Satan um, Vodou perspective, though.
Okay.
You know, so
Okay.
that was funny to me, you know, because it was not part of my direct influence or environment.
Hmm.
So when I heard it and when I saw it, it was like, come on now, y'all are exaggerating. That's how it felt to me as a child, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's to be a little clear about what my religious experience was and what my experience around voodoo also was. I think
Yeah, thank you. Right, that was it was so rich, and it also seems like it is something that, we're talking about this again relating to decentralization and the respect for the individual, right? Because within that one family, right, we see that you all, you chose your different paths, right? Like, and it wasn't a major conflict, right? You could have an atheist, married to a Catholic, charismatic Catholic, and having, who had a father who was a Vodouyizan. And so I
Mhm.
think that's something that's really interesting, that I want to point
Yeah,
out and uplift.
yeah, and I couldn't say that it was conflictless
Okay,
because
fair enough.
there was still some conflict, conversations and finger pointing, and but that did not stop the happening, that did not stop the love, that did
Right.
not stop the family. And
Mm-hmm.
these families, it's interesting that you're saying that, because these families, these members of the families were also so close. Like my mother, my father, my aunt, they all like love each other. Like like we grew up together. Like
Mm-hmm.
we were neighbors, would be at each other's house all the time. My aunt's house in particular was a very funny house because she was the member of church and of charismatic and close to the priest and responsible in church. And in the back of her, Laku was a few kailua, you know,
Mm,
that we were
mm,
not allowed to go to because that was the grandparents had built those in a long time ago, and those doors were closed, and
mm-hmm.
so yeah, it definitely coexists. And there were moments of discussion. You are always doing things, and yeah, you are in de chemin. Yeah, but the love was still there. The family was still one, and very interestingly, positive some way somehow is how I felt it, because I could say that I grew up with love on from all those different sides.
Oh, awesome. That is truly a blessing. Because certainly we know um that people having different religions, that can sometimes and often break up a family,
Mhm.
and where people refuse to talk to different sides of the family or to each other because their religions are different. So yeah, that was really fortunate. You're really fortunate to have that experience. And so you've given us, right,
Until a certain point.
to a point, right?
Until
You
the
talked
point when
about,
I got initiated.
oh, okay. Well, so let's bring it up, right? Because we talked about growing up as a child and these different influences that you had. And so now, right, talk to us about the various communities or groups that you're a part of.
Various
So the faith
communities.
traditions, other types of ways that you may identify, like what are the different groups, like cultural groups, identity groups generally? Let's think broad that you are a part of.
It's a difficult question for me, to be honest. And and it's funny because I was having these conversations this week with my mother and my brother. Um, our family living a Haitian American experience,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is also an African and Western experience, which is an indigenous and quote unquote modern experience, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember recently I went to my brother's house and he was expressing how, he lives in a place kind of by himself alone with his little family. him, his wife, and his children. And he was expressing how he felt like he had community. His children play soccer, and there's the soccer parents, and he has his community.
Mhm.
And my mother was concerned because we don't see my brother. We feel like we don't see my brother enough, you know.
Okay.
And so
Mhm.
my mother was concerned, like, what is that community thing? Does he think that community is his family?
Mm.
You know?
Mm.
So that's a second perspective.
Mm.
And then I think of my Vodou community,
Mhm.
which I also think of my fam as my family,
Right.
you know?
Mhm.
So three different perspective of that word community, some way, somehow. I don't know, some way, somehow, because my mother's perspective of community and is something that I see, that I witnessed, that I grew up with as well, that I witnessed in Africa, and I'll say more afterwards that it's like there's this sense that your community begins with your family and
Mm.
extends out. you know,
Mhm. Right.
there's this ideal, and I'm hearing your question, and I might be wrong, but I'm hearing your question in a way that maybe your family could be one group. Maybe the soccer people could be one group. Maybe the church people could be one group. The voodoo people could be one group, you know?
Mhm.
And then there's also this concept of, of I don't know, of choosing one of these groups. And because you're one of these groups, you cannot be the other, for example. you know? And it's funny because that makes me think
Mhm.
a little bit of the gay community in the way that there's gay community and then straight community.
Mhm.
Um, I see myself in a school of thought where I just do not like to do those separations. Like, and this moment that I'm living these days personally, psychologically, I could say, makes me even want to think about it less. Like, I
Okay.
don't want to separate my communities. I don't want to I don't want to think of being a part of different communities.
Okay. Okay.
I I prefer to be able to think of myself, my spirits behind me, the humans with me, and more. Um, so yeah, that said, I also can say that I see myself in a dual. There's a duality in my sharing with human beings, with my identity. And if you
Mm.
go to my website, for example, I often talk about Afrique Haiti.
Okay.
um, in my art, I speak of Afrique Haiti. In my Vodou, I speak of Guinée, l'Afrique Guinée. Wow, Guinea means something deeper for me, which include the indigenous people of the land,
Mhm.
etc. So different communities. I wouldn't want to talk about it so different, or I want you to
Mhm.
ask your question again. But I different communities. If I could think of different, I see myself in the middle of Haiti and Africa,
Okay.
in the middle of the United States. And by
Okay.
Haiti and Africa, I really look at it as Africanism,
Mhm.
and um, collaboration in some way, somehow. Because
Mm.
again, I look at IT as being an empire where these different Africans, but also friends of Africans, where these different communities
Mm-hmm.
kind of did a synthesis and became one some way somehow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of my Haitian identity, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as being in that place of looking at these different communities and contributing to making them one, you know, some way somehow. Like,
Okay.
I was born in the United States of America, and I am Black. I have American papers. I am Black American, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I have African ancestors. I am African, you know. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
because Africans, when you have African parents or African grand ancestors, you are African, you know. But me being Haitian, you know, promotes this idea, and I do that in my work as an artist and as an activist. You know, I say Black Americans, Jamaicans, Guadeloupeans, Africans, indigenous people, and those who understand the struggles that we go through.
Mm-hmm.
We need to unite. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
need to relearn how to gather under one flag, under one voodoo, under one culture. A
Mm-hmm.
culture, a flag that has many colors and many cultures and many spirits. So I probably lost you and I lost myself a little bit in that. So what could you repeat your question, and then let's see how we could redirect that question and
Well,
make it make sense for me.
okay. I mean, I heard you, and I just want to
Okay.
say that I received your answer, and you don't have
Okay.
to change it
Okay.
for me. Now,
Okay.
if
Okay.
you would like to reevaluate it and give it another shot,
Mm-hmm.
I'll repeat it. But I do receive your response to the
Mm-hmm.
question. Okay, so I want to
Okay.
make that clear. I
Okay.
received that. So
Mm-hmm.
the question as phrased was, at present, what are the various communities or groups that you are a part of?
Mm-hmm. So I am a part of the world, of
Mhm.
the world community. I
Okay.
definitely like to think, you know, of nature, and I love
Mhm.
to this idea of, you know, the leaf, the tree and me, we are one, you know. Without the leaf, I cannot survive. And without me, you know, the leaf, there's a need, there's an interdependence. But
Mhm.
if I don't want to go too far, the closest I'll come is to recognize myself as human first, you know, and
Mhm.
to recognize myself as being a part of the human community.
Okay.
Um, and then, you know, I will say that after recognizing myself as a part of the human community, because of history and because of social political condition, only because of social political condition and only because of history, I am an activist
Mhm.
in the Black community. Negritude,
Mhm.
Pan-Africanism is
Mhm.
something that is very dear to me. It's something that is a part of my existence, a
Okay.
part of my work, and a part of my, you know, part of my work, I should say. So, the Pan African community, you know, is also
Okay.
one that I'd like to acknowledge, and it's interesting because the Haitian that I am, I like to think of Haiti as that identity, you know, Pan-Africanism, some way,
Mm.
somehow, which is
Okay.
why it is so important for me in my language to speak about the empire rather than speaking about the republic,
Mhm. Mhm.
because the republic kind of separates that, you know, a republic, it brings barriers, frontiers, and a
Mm-hmm.
place that I don't like to recognize too much. I respect them, don't get me wrong. And
Mm.
I always, my political view is that there is no reason for a republic not to be a part of an empire, just like kingdoms could be a part of that empire, and just like tribes could be a part of that empire, So
Mm-hmm.
nothing against the republic, but my personal view and the way I see myself and the community I see myself a part of, is that empire of Haiti, is that Pan-African space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I actually consciously, well, I don't only consciously, I think it's just part of my existence. It's part of my, um, how do you call that? It's part of who I am. I don't
Mm-hmm.
focus so much on the fact that I am Haitian from Haiti and grew up on the island of Haiti. That
Mm-hmm.
is my experience, So that is why I speak the way I speak. That is what I've lived. That is what I know. But I don't focus on the difference that makes. But I do focus on the fact that I'm Black and on the importance um, that there is for Black people to reclaim their identity, themselves, their
Mm-hmm.
strength, their beauty and things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Right. So it's such an in-depth and rigorous and thoughtful response. I really appreciate that. And I know that, that our listeners and our viewers of this interview are going to appreciate that as well and connect with you on that level. I am not going to ask you which of these groups are most important to you. I'm not going to ask you that. So I want you to talk to me about your involvement in your current faith community.
So
How did you become introduced to it? What
so
attracted you
to
to it?
so I will, if you allow it, I will add something.
Mm-hmm.
So that Pan-African space,
Okay.
that Pan-African community that I feel a part of, I I believe, or I look at Vodou, Haitian Vodou, or Hayti Vodou, because Vodou is a broad word, is a
Yeah.
word in different languages, and it's seen in so many different ways.
Right.
But I do like to insist on the aspect of Vodou being a culture before a religion.
Mm-hmm.
I was a part of, I've been a part of many debates, about Vodou being a religion or not, and blah blah blah. And I tell people that in my culture, the respect I have for elders, I I I could not say that Vodou is not a religion, because there are some elders in Haiti that fought difficult fights, for Vodou to be respected as a religion,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I cannot go against the ideal that Vodou is also religion,
Right.
But I
Right.
always do insist on the fact that Vodou is not just a religion.
Mm-hmm.
There is the religion, but Vodou is culture, is a way of being, a way of doing things. It's Haitian Vodou, and maybe that is not said enough, in my opinion. But I'd like to be one of those who market that ideal. Haitian Vodou is culture. It is reclaiming of indigenous culture.
Mm-hmm.
It is reclaiming of the way we look at the human being, looking at the human being with respect, being able to see past your skin,
Mm-hmm.
so diving into the color of your skin and culture and all of that. Like Vodou is is that indigenous way of seeing the human being connected to nature, you know?
Mm.
So, and that
Mhm.
culture to me, the way it was synthesized, you know, in the Empire of Haiti, you know, to me it represents Pan-African culture, you know.
Okay.
And I say that with all that respect. Like it's not something that I'd like to, you know, push down the throat of, you know, Protestants or anybody who doesn't see themselves, you know, a part of, you know, some people might not be very comfortable with that idea that Vodou would be their culture. Um, and I don't intend to force it on anybody,
Mm-hmm.
but I do express my personal view, you know,
Right.
that Vodou is Haitian Vodou is that culture, you know, is that culture of respecting faith.
Mm-hmm.
That culture of respecting faith, whether it be Christian, Buddhism, um, whatever you want to call it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Vodou is a culture of respecting that thing and and also including it in the service.
Mm.
As serviteur, you know, we include you
Mm-hmm.
in the service that is ours, you know.
Mm-hmm.
My ancestors might not be Congo, my ancestors might not be Dahomey, but in
Mm-hmm.
the Règlement Vodou, I salute Dahomey, I salute Congo, I salute Igbo, I salute
Right.
all those that are a part of this Pan-African community, you know, that recognize themselves as humans. So, you know, humans are free in some way, somehow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And for me, hmm, for me, there is nuance between culture and faith, you know.
Mm-hmm.
um there is faith within culture, right? But there is culture, you know, and I first find myself in the Vodou culture because I find myself in the Pan-African community, because I find myself in this concept of Haiti, because I find myself in this indigenous way of respecting the relationship of man and nature, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I just find
Right.
myself there. So that is that. And then comes my faith, you know, my personal faith. That is something very dear to me, very personal to me, very precious as well, that I don't necessarily intend to just blur out to the world for no reason, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of it, what difference does it really make? You know,
Mm-hmm.
because I respect your faith, because I respect the other, you know, whatever somebody wants to have as their faith, you know, to work the magic, you know, to
Mm-hmm.
work with.
Right.
Um, so so yeah, so how did I come across Voodoo?
Yeah. I know it
Initiate.
was kind of, you said it was, it was kind of around you, but like what prompted you, what attracted you to kind of, to choosing it as your
So
main,
so
expression.
after saying what I said, um, and and growing up, developing my person, you know,
Mm-hmm.
speaking different languages, finding myself, you know, for some reason I'm thinking about being in school in Miami at some
Mm-hmm.
point, and then being in a Haitian student gala, and then having Haitian students wanting to represent Haitian culture and them choosing to dance to soca music to represent Haiti, some way, somehow.
Wow.
It was a very interesting experience for me because
Hmm.
it was intriguing and it was
And soca music, for the benefit of viewers who don't know, soca
Trinidad
music is
and
music from
Tobago.
Trinidad.
Yes, Trinidad and Tobago that
Yeah.
I have high respect for and that I believe is a part of the IET I speak of.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't have a problem with it if the consciousness was there and clear.
Right.
But understanding that it was maybe a lack of knowledge, maybe an embarrassment of our own culture, feeling that maybe our own culture is not good enough,
Mhm.
maybe the
Mm.
compa was a little too slow, and it wasn't upbeat enough. Maybe
Mm.
the racine or the rara was a little too voodoo or a little too drummy, for some
Mhm.
of us. So, let's do something that is like compa, but that is accelerated, that has the
Mm.
vibe of us Caribbean people, but that is not voodoo, you know.
Mhm.
Those intrigues were part of the development of my being, being in
Mhm.
university, I was developing my person,
Mhm.
developing my intellect and witnessing these things and these things that also were inspiring me to deepen, to find more roots, more ground and
Mhm.
more so there was definitely that. There's also the fact that I love the drums. I just
Right. You
love the
mentioned
drums and
that.
I love voodoo drums. There's also the fact that there's so many different facts. But what I will say is that dance, I'm a dancer, choreographer today.
Mhm.
And that was not what I wanted to be. I love the drum so much. I wanted to drum. But the
Mm.
but the dance caught me, my dear.
Okay.
I got bronchitis. Ain't nobody got time for
Oh.
that. But the dance caught me really. Like the story of me becoming a dancer is so random, and through dance, I was forced to connect even deeper with my body,
Mm.
and my body is a big part of me. People have different gifts and people have different senses and way they receive things, receive messages and things like that.
Mhm.
Some people they have good odorat. When they smell something is very sensitive. They get messages that way. Some people it's voice, it's sound. Me dance is one of them for me. Like
Mhm.
dance is something that that doesn't just happen, that I don't just make happen, it also happens to me in some way
Mhm.
somehow. And finding myself in dance kind of pushed me to find myself in voodoo.
Mm.
And I don't want to make this story too, I don't want to be I don't want to be too poetic and speak around the bush. Let's say that I was drumming for an African dance class.
Okay.
Okay. And then for some reason, I was part of this African troupe as a drummer. And
Mm.
then one day, there was a dancer missing, and they made me dance. They asked me to dance because I knew the choreo. I was there the whole time, and I had to
Mm.
replace a dancer. I replaced the dancer. I was seen. People saw me dancing, and
Mhm.
and I think my in Vodou terms, I would say my zitoile shined. You know,
Mm. Your
my
star.
gift, my star, what I have,
Mhm.
it was seen, it was perceived. So I became so lucky. Like I was so fortunate to have some of the best dance professors that I've ever known see me and choose to give me private lessons. I had like a ballet teacher that saw me and became my ballet private teacher. She was a solist from Beijing Ballet, an amazing person, you know.
Mm.
My, you know, people from Graham Technique became my private teachers. Horton Technique became my private teachers. I had amazing dance teachers for no reason. Like,
Mm.
when I say for no reason, because it was really out of the blue. And I know there were people that would have dreamed to have these teachers, that worked hard to, you know, to come across these teachers, and that did not necessarily succeed. And I did not work hard. That was not my dream, but
Mm.
that was my zétoile. That was my
Mhm.
path. That
Right.
was,
Your
you know,
calling.
that was my calling. So I
Mm-hmm.
was super lucky, and I became a dancer. And then again, in my research, trying to find root, I'm like, why am I this black negritude person dancing ballet? I want to do Haitian dance. Let's go to Haiti and refine Haitian dance. I must say that I always say that my uncle was my first Haitian dance teacher, because when I was a child, my uncle, who was a dancer in Haiti, would teach me, like, you know, Valou and Congo to me
Oh,
and my
okay.
sister. That was a long time ago. I was a child. I
Mm.
never imagined I would be a dancer, or that those things would serve me.
Mm. Look
So
at that.
I always honor him, you know, to say that he was my first dance teacher, and my first
Mm.
Haitian dance teacher for sure. But it was really later on that I went back to Haiti to search for Haitian dance.
Mm-hmm.
And then another person I called my teacher, Linus Louis, who's an amazing Haitian dancer, Haitian dance teacher in Haiti. He saw me and he saw something, and he said, you're not alone, and you're not a student, you're a teacher. Teach this to class. That was my first dance class that I was going to take at Viviane Gauthier, because I was doing research where to go
Mm.
learn Haitian dance, you know?
Oh.
And then, you know, I knew people like Jean-Guy Saint-Sus and Jean-René Delsoin, who did like Haitian contemporary dance, quote unquote. And I was looking for the tradition, you know? So they sent me to Viviane Gauthier show. They were like, that place is the place. So I
Mm.
go there, and the first teacher, he sees me and he says, you teaching this class. And
Mm.
I feel like I get possessed. And I teach the class. And everybody thought it was amazing, including myself. It's embarrassing, but I thought it was amazing. Like, I
Mm.
didn't know I knew these things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I was impressed. And I became, you know, a person that is doing Haitian dance some way, somehow. And where was that coming from? So I had to, you know, I didn't have to understand. I wasn't trying to understand, but it was just my path. I
Mm-hmm.
continued on that path, you know,
Okay.
and to understand that it wasn't me that knew, but spirit knew.
Mm-hmm.
But what
Mm-hmm.
spirit knew Haitian dance? Haitian spirits, you know, and
Right.
where to discover Haitian spirits?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so that's one part of my path. The other part is that I was starting to have dreams around that same period. And there's one dream in particular that hit me very hard. It was a time when I was a dancer and I was a vegetarian. And I'm one that loves nature. You know, I always love to pray. Like I said, I was never religious per se, but I was
Mm-hmm.
always my faith was always close to me, you know.
Right.
Um, and I had a relationship with God, and you know, I was against killing, you know. So
Mm.
it's like,
Okay.
to think about things like animal sacrifice was very dramatic to me. And I
Mm.
remember having this particular dream that I'll reveal. It's like, um to me, it felt like a cauchemar. How do you, it felt like a bad dream
Mm.
um at the time, you
Okay.
know, where I was. in the middle of, there was like spirits. It felt like spirits. They were like humans, but for some reason I knew they were spirits, not humans. You know, I knew they were
Mm-hmm.
ancestors. There were women, men, young, old, short, tall, all different types. And I was in the middle, and they were like giving me like chickens and geese and how do you call pantad, and like
Duck.
different ducks and all different type
Mhm.
of animals, goats, you know,
Right.
like, and they were like giving it to me in the middle and talking, and it was so annoying because I in my dream I could, and I was a vegetarian and I was like anti, you know, animal sufferance or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that, so I could smell the animals in the dream, and I could smell, for some reason I could smell blood. They weren't dead yet. It's as if they were giving them to me for me to sacrifice or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like. And then I remember in the background there was this old, I saw it as like an old man. I did not mention that I practice martial arts as well. And you know, think
Okay.
about somebody practicing martial arts and seeing a master. You see this old man dressed all in white with like long white beard, and you know, that's kind of what I saw.
Right.
And it was like, to me, it was like God. It was not God because it was a human, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in the dream, but it was like what I would look up to, you know. It was something positive, something I would want to be like,
Okay.
something I knew me. So I fought these spirits off, like, get the hell off of me with your stinky chicken and stuff like that. And I went to him and I started to scream at him like, why are you allowing them to do this to me? You know I don't like to kill. You know I don't like animals. You know this. You know that. I was so mad and fussing at him. And then I woke up in the dream. I woke up my partner that was next to me to be like, this is the dream I was having, I think she heard me in my dream, so I told her what it is, what it was. And then I'm like, and then I went like, oh my gosh, I forgot to ask him who he was, and I did not mean to be so rude
Mm.
to him. So I was like, I need to go back and apologize and, you know, ask him who he was. So I closed my eyes. I tried to sleep again. And I guess it was my day because I don't know how I did it, but I went back
Okay.
into that dream.
Okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
went back into that dream. There was no more everybody else. This time it was just the old man. He was like in heaven, like in clouds and stuff. You know how it would be in the imagination of a child, dressed all in white and stuff like that. And I came to him and I came to his back as if he knew I was coming. And I came back with respect and I said, I really do apologize. I did not mean to be disrespectful. Um, I did not mean to, you know, it's just that I was overwhelmed. All this was too much for me and things like that. And he just laughed.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started speaking to me and told me so many things that were so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he spoke to me about Desalim
Mm.
that created the empire of Haiti, which is why that this school is part of my work today. You know,
Okay.
um, he spoke to me a lot about voodoo. He told me about the chickens and things like that. He told me, I said, but I just that I was overwhelmed. I don't like to kill animals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, don't worry. When the time comes, you will know. I know you don't like to kill animals, but you like candles, don't you? And I love candles. I always love candles. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
I was this preppy guy with candles all over my apartment. That
Okay.
was who I was and I guess I'm not like that anymore because my partner doesn't like candles as much, but I still love candles. It was like, you love candles, but when you turn them on, when you light them, you light them with emptiness. I
Mm,
know you believe in spirits. I know you trust
mm,
spirits. You know spirits. Why don't you, when you light these candles, you light them with intention?
mm, mm-hmm,
And then I asked him his name. He told me his name, um, which was very, very an important information for my voodoo life.
mm-hmm.
Um, and then I woke up. And then for some reason, that moment was my moment of voodoo. It was my moment.
Okay.
From that moment on, I started lighting candles with intention,
Mm-hmm.
and the you know people, the spirits I was lighting them for were voodoo spirits. I don't know why. you know,
Mm-hmm.
I was lighting them for my ancestors. I was lighting them for Ezuli Danto, for Ezuli Freda Daome. I was lighting them for Ogu Ferai. I was just, I don't, ask me why today. I don't know. I guess he did tell me about voodoo in the dreams. In the dream, he did tell me his name, which was the name of a voodoo spirit. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that, it was the name of my metet that
Mm-hmm.
made the connection. I guess from that moment, I knew, I don't know, I knew I had to be more intentionally voodoo.
Okay.
My intention had to be more,
Wow.
using voodoo vocabulary, I guess.
Okay.
And that's what I did, and that's how my path begun.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that was another initiation right there.
Right. Right. For
Because that
sure.
was definitely an initiation into the voodoo path. So from there, my interest started to sharpen,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And
So how long have you been practicing? How long has it been since that happened? And you've been actively practicing voodoo?
that, when did that happen? Because I was already with my partner, that must have been like 2011, 2010, end
Okay.
2010, beginning 2011.
Okay.
But I didn't get initiated till way later after. I think I got initiated in 2016 or 17.
Okay.
I think 17 probably. And I don't have the best memory when it comes to dates for
Okay.
some reason. But um,
Right.
yeah, it was probably that was, I guess I could, and it's funny because today, being a Unga, what do I call voodoo practice?
Mm-hmm.
And, especially me looking at voodoo not as a religion, but looking at the culture of voodoo. I feel like all the time when I was in charismatic church, I was practicing voodoo because I was respecting my father, I was respecting my mother, I was respecting my aunt, and being
Mm-hmm.
myself at the
Mm.
same time.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
I was recognizing the importance of spirituality
Mm-hmm.
in my being, in my existence. I
Mm-hmm.
was open to spirits, which is why I was able to, be touched by the Holy Ghost, as they would call it, And
Right.
to me, all of that, to me today, was voodoo practice. It's just that I
Okay.
wasn't calling it that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there, in my that other initiation was a certain consciousness of voodoo practice. In that
Right.
moment, I start lighting candles in the name of. So that became a certain conscious voodoo practice. But it
Right.
was then a voodoo practice without reglement, without knowledge, without a certain type of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then I got initiated around 2017, I believe. I always think it's 2016, but I know it's not 2016 because when I look at my spiritual mother's videos, I was
Okay.
not part of that generation. So it's probably
Okay.
17, I'm guessing. Um, then I had a voodoo practice that had that had guidance by, the community, I could say.
Mm-hmm.
Because, before I feel like I was alone,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't even have family, and I didn't
Right.
even have necessarily the spirits in my practice necessarily, because the spirit came in, the Holy Ghost touched me. It was mostly for people, some way, somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like the Holy Ghost was consciously accompanying my understanding or my practice, I was
Okay.
practicing, I believe, spirit is always there. I believe, spirit is always there, always, whether you know it or not. So spirit was there, but I had no understanding, no consciousness. It was just, like a savage, when I say like a savage, definitely not in a, Western point of view
Mm-hmm.
perspective. I
Okay.
mean, like an animal from nature, like an animal
Okay.
that's not trained inside a house type of thing.
Right. Like,
I
no,
was
like
wild,
wild. Right.
wild. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
translated like that was a Creole English
I
translation
know because it's
that did
sauvage.
not work.
Sauvage has a
Yeah.
different connotation. I know. I'm following you. Yeah.
So that was the beginning,
Mm,
and then I found spirit. I found a voice. I
mm,
found a voice kind of guiding me and helping me, telling me light up candles, telling me this is okay. It's after that dream that I went back to eating meat some way, somehow. I don't even know why, but
mm,
it was almost as if I recognized that meat was just gonna become important, a part of my practice. And
mm-hmm.
it's so funny that I say that because I'm not one that believes that if you're Vodouyizan, you need to eat meat or that you need to do sacrifice. I don't believe that particularly. I do believe that if you are a practicing Houngan or Mambo serving community,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't see how you would not deal with animal,
Right.
but but you can practice. You could be a practitioner without dealing with that. I believe.
Right.
I don't. There's like a lot of nuances,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
at that point,
Because
I
there's
found,
reglement, there's
yeah.
tradition. So and unless you're prepared to change that.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
again, community in a way that I am because we are.
Right.
So I can never do without we type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
so I found voice, and then that voice, materialized into community voice. Now I have a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual mother. I have a community that
Praise God.
looks at me, that respects me, that
Mm-hmm.
serves with me. So I see it as a beautiful thing. I feel blessed. I really do. I feel like a lucky bastard in some way,
Mm.
somehow, because I feel like I was able to find myself in a certain depth, at a certain level that I did not have to. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, and then it's not over. The path continues, right? so
Right.
we'll see what's next. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me, I just my last little set of questions is talk to me about how your faith influences your creativity. You mentioned that you're a dancer, you're a choreographer, right? So how does your faith influence your creativity and artistic expression? Like,
So
is there
that's
something in particular
very
that you think what have you been inspired to do, right?
so that's
Specifically because of your faith?
so that's a struggle. It's funny, it's very interesting because now I feel like there's a little conflict. I feel like I was an artist because that was my path to becoming a Unga.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So the moment that I started to to understand that I was a Unga, to see myself as a Unga, to also make that choice because, my mother was a Mambo. She was chosen, and she was chosen by the spirit. My great grandmother, her great grandmother, skipped 2 generations and waited for her to try to pass on the laku.
Okay.
And she refused, and she never told me those things, not until recently. It's so funny.
Okay.
So she was a Mambo, but she did not follow that consciousness, and she did not decide to serve. Me, at the point where I found that consciousness and where I decided to see myself as a Unga, whatever that means, um, it's almost as if the artist was no longer. It's almost as if I was an artist to become a Unga. Once I became a Unga, then it's hard for me to see myself as an artist anymore. And I'm revealing this, to you, my sister.
Wow.
And to the
Thank
people who
you.
are going to listen to this. But
I appreciate
today
that.
it's funny because I still continue to say I'm an artist, but it's political. An artist, I'm allowed to be crazy, I'm allowed to say things, but in reality, I see myself. I often say I'm a Unga that dances. And dance is part of what the spirits give me to work with. So I work with my dance. So even when I teach a class today, even though I know dance technique, I had amazing dance teachers, but I don't teach what I was taught by them. I teach what I was taught by spirit.
There you go. Ay, bobo.
Yeah.
Ay, bobo.
So
Yes.
So I feel like I'm a Unga and I do service, and dance is on the path of my service, on the path of the work that I have to do with Unga. So all of a sudden I feel like even when I teach culture. I don't teach dance. I teach culture, which is why as a Unga I sing, I dance, I give stories, I mention the history, I mention my perspective, the perspective I believe that was given to me, as to pass down. In the way that I told you that dream I had, Dessalines came up. I was told many things about Dessalines that turned out to be true. I was not a historian and I didn't research,
Yes, yeah.
I was passed down those information through spirit. So I feel responsibility to pass them down to the next generation,
I understand.
So I use dance for that because when I teach a class, I say I'm gonna teach a dance class. I do reveal that my dance classes are not like others. I do reveal that I am Vodouyizan, that I am a Houngan who dances. So this class is gonna be, it's gonna be me sharing me, with community. So that's what I do.
Right.
So that's how it influences, I guess, my thing. In terms of inspiration, I still do work because recently, for example, I created a show. It was called I Am IT. So the work I do, I don't think it's influenced so much by voodoo. That's like more of my activism. Like my work speaks more of Pan-Africanism than it does of voodoo, but voodoo is my language, voodoo is my culture. So because my work is kind of deeply rooted, so voodoo is what comes out. Voodoo is what I know, so you can only share what you know. You know,
Right.
I don't try to lie to people. I try
Right.
to tell them my truth. And Vodou is my truth. Vodou is who I am. I am Vodou. Vodou is me. So if
Mhm.
I share me, I share Vodou, you know?
Right.
Um,
I love
yeah.
how I mean, this is so good. Yeah, there's so you really dropping knowledge with us. You especially being an artist, and you talked about that, like that tension, right? Of and I would say it, I would frame it as, there's a technique versus the anointing.
Mm,
And that's how I
mhm,
frame it, being an
mm,
artist myself,
mhm,
and even
mhm,
speaking with friends who are artists. And I
mhm,
remember recently having a conversation, with my good friend who's an artist. And I said, I didn't like the people who they were collaborating with. I
mm,
said, you may
mhm,
not be able to hear it or see it. I was like, but you have anointing that they don't
mm,
have.
mhm,
So that energy didn't flow right.
mhm, mhm,
They may have had the technique, they may have
mhm,
had training, but they don't have what you have. They don't have that
mhm,
anointing.
mhm,
So there was an incongruence there that I
mhm,
felt. I didn't feel it, when
mhm,
like it's like
mhm,
when I hear my friend doing their
mhm,
art, I feel that in my spirit.
mhm,
That's what I'm listening to. That
mhm,
pleases me, my spirit.
mhm,
I can't tell you I'm not trained in his art form. I can't break it down for you and tell you the technique and this and that, but I know that it's right with me,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And I want to listen to you. But
mhm.
then there's other people that you may want to collaborate with. They may have the background, they may have the pedigree, right? They may
Mhm.
have the following, but it ain't
But
it's not gonna jive right. It's not
yep,
gonna drive right because
yep.
your calling is different. That's your anointing. And so that's
Mhm,
what I hear with you, Unga
mhm,
Sebastian, when
mhm.
you were
And
talking about is that, there's a difference between being a folklore artist,
mhm, mhm,
being an
mhm,
artist who does folklore, and being an Unga,
mhm, mhm,
because your
mhm.
spirit is going to guide you
Yeah.
to do whatever form of art you're called to do, to do
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
work you're called to do in service
So,
of spirit.
and I'll reveal something. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna grab some water
Sure.
because I feel a little. I'll be right back.
Yeah. I can even pause it.
Okay, that works.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So you've been so generous with us, right? And we're wrapping up now. And my last question has to do with the role of place. Like what is the role of place? I want to know, do you have some favorite memories about practicing your faith in the area where you live? Right? The general area, specific area. And if there are any places that are especially important to your worship, like what's the role of like placemaking and space, physical locations, physical space, to your worship?
It's so funny how the question it doesn't always hit like before we're live, and then when we're live, spirit comes up. You know.
Mm-hmm. Did you see I
It's so
rephrased it?
funny.
I didn't know how, but that was, yeah.
But
They wanted it to hit you in a certain way because I totally didn't. Right? I
yeah,
totally
yeah, yeah,
rephrased what was on the paper.
yeah, yeah. I did want to say something from the last question. I'm
Sure.
so sorry. I'll just finish it up to say that there is one thing that happened to me in my practice, as a dancer. Before I mentioned how I was doing Haitian dance, like how it was magical. They gave it to me and I did it basically. So I always had like a little scare, a little fear, a little lack of satisfaction. I was never satisfied of what I taught because
Mm,
I felt like it was coming from a place of I haven't studied enough, I haven't done enough. And then
mhm.
the moment I sat in my initiation and chose, to accept my identity as a Houngan
Mm.
and to teach from that place. It was so magical. From that moment on, I never taught a class for me not to be satisfied anymore. Because
Mm.
from that moment, I wasn't teaching, I was letting spirit teach. And then I was also a student. I was witnessing the class and enjoying it, as much as everybody else. It's like I felt like, ooh, like spirit was present today. Like, it was I
Right.
understood that the responsibility was not all on my shoulders, and but anyway, passing that and getting to your question, it touched me in so many different places because it's so deep and it's so important as
Mhm.
well. And could you say the
Sure.
question
So we're talking about the,
again?
well, one, what are some favorite memories about practicing your faith in the area where you live? And
Whew.
if there are any places that are especially important to your worship.
So, place.
Mhm.
Today, I'm young. Or I like to think I'm young. I'm pretty old now. I've been saying I'm young all my life. I need to stop that. But it's a way to say that I don't know everything. And again, there's the human being, and there's spirit might see it differently. But the human being that I am, the experiences that I've had, the knowledge that I've came across at this point of my life, I understand that place has its importance. It's so important.
Mhm.
For example, when I speak of the empire of Haiti,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, I don't believe that it's random that the island of Haiti, you know, has such important role for that concept of empire.
Mhm.
I don't believe that it's for no reason that the Taino adopted that island as well as the spiritual island and called it Haiti, the name of God, the name of elevation or whatever.
Mhm.
So I understand that place have importance. Your habitation
Mhm.
is important. Where your umbilical cord is so important. Where you are is so important. To be present.
Mhm.
I went through psychological struggle at some point in my life because living between Haiti and Africa, I do work in Africa. I work in Benin. I work in Alada as
Okay.
well as I work in IT. I have my projects, my business, my work, my voodoo, in
Mhm.
IT, but I live in the US. And at a point, I remember feeling like I was living in Haiti and Africa, but that wasn't my reality. I
Mhm.
was My reality in the present was that I was in America, you know.
Mhm.
So as much as Haiti was so important and where I come from and where I do my voodoo, as much as Alada was so important to me and important for so many reasons, it's
Mhm.
the place where the word voodoo comes from. The word.
Ezeli feda da bane, olwamwe.
So as much as all of these were important, it was definitely so important for my being, for my mental health, for my truth, to also understand
Mhm.
that America was important, was as important, some way, somehow. As important, just differently. Again, that duality, right? Again, this idea of recognizing what something is, recognizing what a space is, but without forgetting the plurality, and
Right.
the possibilities, of so many different spaces being so important. So I'll mention that, and that definitely reiterates the fact that space is important. But I'll end with this story, the story that marked me so much, and it's gonna be the story that reinstated my faith right before I go in the Jevo to initiate as a Unga.
Mm.
Um, I was in Abriko where I was living, and I was coming from Jeremy like at 11, 12, like almost midnight. And then something happened. I was sick also at the time, I must say, and I went through a moment where I lost or repère.
Mm.
um, I did not. So I was on on my motorcycle. I
Mm.
lived like in a forest in Abriko. Like my parents live on a big property, and there's a lot of trees, and it's
Mm.
like a forest, literally, and you have to go through the forest before you get to the house. And my motorcycle stopped working right like at the entrance point of the forest at the gate.
Mm.
It was late at night. My laku, there are snakes, frogs, all types of stuff. It started raining, pouring the moment when that motorcycle turned off.
Wow.
It started pouring, and
Mm.
I got lost. I lost my whippeal. I remember this sensation, this feeling of, because we live in Abuko, there's no electricity from the States, but my
Mhm.
parents have a generator, and they use the generator at night. So no light, no nothing. My motorcycle's off. I listened to the generator and I searched for the light. The
Mhm.
light turned off. The sound of the generator kind of faded out for me. I
Mm.
couldn't hear anything. I couldn't do anything. And I had to go inside of myself.
Yes.
I had to remember some songs that my spirit guides had taught me inside of me in my dreams,
Mhm. Mm.
to refine faith. I was lost. There was a big hole that we had dug in the laku because we're trying to do like trying to find water under the soil, and it was not covered. So it's like I was lost. I could fall in it. I'm scared of snakes. There's snakes all over the place. I was scared, y'all. There was like fear, and not only was there fear, I was lost in space.
Mm.
And then that's when I realized that I had no other choice. I had no other way. I didn't have a phone. My phone had died. No other way of finding myself but then to find the space inside of me, refine the faith that was part of my identity because I had kind of lost, a little bit of it. I had lost my practice of praying and things like that.
Mhm.
I had to go inside, refine prayer. Like I had to release my fear and be
Yeah.
like, well, if this is what it's gonna be, so be it. And um let me find myself inside me. And
Mhm.
then the moment I did that and I started to sing a song that was taught to me in my dreams, all of a sudden my senses came back. I heard the generator, I saw the light, and I found myself right in front of my house. It was so funny.
Wow.
That was like quite a lesson for me. It was quite an experience for me.
Mm.
It was very intense. Like it's one that I'll never forget. It was probably one of my favorite moments as well
Mhm.
with dealing with space
Mhm.
because um space was found by faith some way
Yes.
somehow,
Yes. Yes.
and space actually had to disappear for it to exist again,
Hey. Hey.
almost as if the space I had to find was inside first, wherever
Mhm.
I was. I
Right.
had to find that space, and that space would allow me to be on sacred ground, which for me was my home at the moment. So,
Mhm.
that's what I would say to that. Um, I hope that answers your question a little bit, but
Well, oh yes, it was, that's your response. Your response is good, right? Everything that you say is good. And this was really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. The stepping out, really giving us a visual, right? An example of the concept of stepping out on faith, right? And and also sensory. It sounds like there's something going on there with senses too. Maybe it's like you went to a different space and your senses then supported you in revealing what was within, and kind of
yeah.
removing the noise, removing, right, the external, the outside distractions of the physical reality so that you could really focus on what was happening inside. Really powerful. Thank you so very much. You've been extremely generous. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close? Or that
I feel
was
like
it?
I feel like I spoke a lot. Like I was like, "Whoa, Sebastien, you kind of."
This
But
was
my
awesome.
candle was lit, so I believe strongly that the spirits also were able to speak through me and say what what was maybe important in this moment. So I thank you for giving us space for to express and share and be together. Because
Yes.
I am because we are is how I am for sure. So
I
thanks for
Bobo.
creating the space for the we.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. This has been such a treat. It's been such a blessing. And I know those who are sitting here watching, I know that they're being blessed by it. I know it was a blessing for them. And I thank you. I thank you for being involved in this project. And I wish you all the best in your new endeavors and where spirit is going to, I can't wait to see where spirit is going to lead you next.
Ooh.
So
Thank
on
you.
that note, I thank you, my brother, and
Thank you, my sister. And
we
I
will
take in
talk
your
again.
blessings. I take them in. I know the words of a mumble are powerful. So thank you for all your kind words.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.